I can see how Mean Streets and all of those films, how it came natural to you and the characters you knew, but this is so different.
Yeah.
Why did you want to do it, and why was it, as some say, a natural for you?
Well,
Martin Scorsese's The Age of Innocence came as part of a trend in the 1990s for movie adaptations of classic novels. However, Leighton Grist, an expert on Scorsese, points out that up until then, many had associated the director's personal filmmaking with violent contemporary narratives often situated within the Italian-American lower orders. But because The Age of Innocence focuses on members of the upper class, in a time period far removed from the director's previous filmography, apparently it did not sit comfortably with Scorsese's authorial star image. True, the costume drama genre usually looks like this. Whereas Scorsese's films had been more like this.
stuck on this.
So what business did a director like Scorsese have dealing with such sophisticated subject matter? Well, he chose to hone in on a more nuanced form of conflict.
It's refinement, it's refined violence. It's emotional and psychological violence, just as powerful and just as deadly as Joe Pesci getting shot in Goodfellas. I really believe that.
The savagery of this is shown through his signature directorial style, a result of long-standing collaborations with the cinematographer Michael Ballhaus and editor Thelma Schoonmaker. Although an incredible amount of research went into accurately recreating scenes of New York at the turn of the century, the film's style is not entirely realist. There are expressive elements that provide insight into the characters' emotions. In this video essay, I will explore how, with his mastery of film techniques, particularly camera movement and editing, Scorsese was able to make visible things that could not be clearly expressed. Let's start with the opening scene at the opera, where there are several examples of motivated camera movement and creative editing. The first shot of the main character Newland Archer shows us the white flower in his lapel, and only after tilts up to show his face. Again, when we first see his fiancée May Welland, she is also holding a bunch of white lily of the valley, which are also shown before her faces. By showing the flowers before the characters themselves, Scorsese's camera indicates how they place conformity above their own individuality. Indeed, May's first line implies her fixed, conventional mindset.
Why should we change what is already settled?
A dissolve between two shots normally suggests the passage of time, but in this scene, Schoonmaker uses it to create a complex montage of jewelry and fancy costumes, like looking through a kaleidoscope. This is intercut with the man watching from above, linking his movement with the camera's panning. During the ball scene, Scorsese again finds a way to tie camera movement with the action on screen.
And what I was interested there was, dancing.
Yeah.
Of course, camera movement is choreography, it's dancing.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the camera movement being as much of a dancer as he is, if possible.
An unbroken Steadicam shot follows Archer through the claustrophobic corridors of the mansion. As he approaches Regina Beaufort, who is welcoming guests, the camera drifts upwards towards this massive portrait of her, and only then tilts downwards to acknowledge her, as if the painting is more important than the woman herself. Robert Edgar Hunt wrote that by moving the camera, the director can suggest a much more unified and coherent sense of space within the frame. Camera movement can counteract the need to edit a sequence together. The continuous shot not only achieves this, but also embeds Archer in the ritual and convention symbolized by the maze-like mansion. Following him into the ballroom, the camera suddenly zooms towards a painting of two men, heads bent together as they discuss behind the lady's back.
This was a world balanced so precariously that its harmony could be shattered by a whisper.
This cohesion of energetic camera movement and narration merges the two. It's like the viewer is being shown around the ball by a gossiping guest. We're drawn into the vicious rumors of New York high society. Paula Farker writes that, Not only do the paintings Scorsese uses from Wharton's novel reveal the intricate rules of New York aristocracy, but they also guide their owners or viewers into following these strict rules. Again, within the ballroom, Scorsese frames a group of women so that they mirror the painting behind them.
Well, it's a matter of expressing a feeling and how it's interpreted through an image. You know, it's where to place that lens. Because when you're making a picture as a director, you're taking a lens and you're showing the audience what to look at. Right. Start with you, tilt down to here, pan over here. Right. Something comes in, the story.
And you're leading that thought
you're
process.
Leading that thought process.
That.
So that is directing. And when I feel that kind of emotion, it makes it easier for me to aim that lens, and that's fun.
Through camera work, Scorsese repeatedly reinforces the idea that these people want to or feel forced to copy the artworks they own. Even in moments when the camera stops moving, its stillness continues to carry meaning. For instance, here the fixed camera position results in the room remaining the same, while the use of dissolves makes the dancers look like ghosts passing through it. It suggests their transience, while the social structures they follow, represented by the ballroom, remain rigid and unchanging.
Age of Innocence is an especially interesting movie in terms of the camera, because here the camera has the opportunity to tell the subtext of what's going on. We tell the story that they actually want to express, but they can't because they're just trapped by the society and by the century.
Another way Ballhouse illustrates this oppressive, inescapable watching is the frequent use of overhead shots. Looking down on the characters gives the viewer a sense of omniscience, of seeing everything. A perfect way of expressing how overly observant this society is.
Automatically, I see where to place the camera when I feel that emotion.
Another technique was slowing down the speed the camera recorded footage.
Also at that time we were able to change the speed of the camera very easily. Yeah. There was a new device that was created, the ARRI, and we were able to do that, so we played with it a bit.
Mm-hmm. You'll see that Marty does what he does a good deal in this film. He begins the shot in normal speed, 24 frames per second, and as she crosses the room, it slows down into slow motion.
It was not the custom in New York drawing rooms for a lady to get up and walk away from one gentleman in order to seek the company of another. But the Countess did not observe this rule.
And then it speeds up again as she gets over and sits down and starts to talk. And that moment when you're hearing what she's doing, what she doesn't realize is transgressing the rules, is very powerful because of that.
This idea of invisible rules is present throughout the film. After being alone with Ellen, Newland walks along a street covered with snow, which dominates the frame and contrasts with the warm yellow glow of the roses in the window. As he enters, an iris effect darkens the edges of the frame. This blocks out the white snow which can be seen to represent May. It also emphasizes the bright yellow, a color which symbolizes his growing infatuation with Ellen, as well as the act of rebellion that pursuing her signifies.
And those yellow roses. I'll give you another address.
Very good.
The shopkeeper's voice makes him pause, realizing his transgression.
George? Mr. Archer, 2 separate orders.
The contrast between the gentle dissolves and the sharp severity of the cuts, when he changes his mind, highlight his internal conflict between desire for the Countess and loyalty to May and his society's expectations. After the roses have been delivered to Ellen, the camera flies around her before the entire screen dissolves to yellow. But this immediately turns to white, and then dissolves to the next scene of Newland and May walking among these cages, while the camera steadily dollies along with them. This transition between scenes, as well as the contrast in camera movements, the energetic circling of Ellen against the sluggish dolly with May, marks the pair as opposites, again representative of how Newland longs for both freedom and fidelity. Editing like this draws attention to itself, but as Schoonmaker says,
we did want to make the cutting jarring and uncomfortable. A lot of people think editing should be invisible, but we've never felt that way. We always like to slap the audience in the face if it's required.
There is repeated use of the iris technique from before. In an interview, Bullhouse said they were used for moments in which the viewer goes into Archer's head. They have the effect of shutting out the world around, giving both Archer and us as viewers a brief moment of privacy.
And what we did there, in order to make that excruciatingly painful for every, each other hanging on each other's words, every word, was we dropped all the sound out completely. Completely. And we irised in on the two of them, an old-fashioned silent movie, irised in, and just separated them from everybody, sound and picture, and they hang on every word. And of course they, you know, they miss each other again.
Although it could be called over the top, this expressive style of editing is necessary to reveal the inner emotions of the characters, because they are unable to do so themselves. One incredibly emotional moment is when Newland and Ellen briefly escape to an isolated cottage. He is caught between blindly following the rules laid out for him and pursuing what he truly desires. The warm glow of the fire and the cold light from the snowy exterior shine on each side of his face, a visual representation of his indecision. As the camera slowly moves in on Newland, becoming a close-up as he shuts his eyes, wishing, the sound again dies out. I think this is the most brutal cut in the whole film. It really emphasizes how painful his separation from her is.
You know, when I still get a thrill when you cut one shot next to the other, and there's a movement, but not a movement of, I must say, it's not a movement necessarily of the movement that's on shot A going to shot B, and the movement of shot B coming from shot A. It's the movement that is conjured up in your head by the cut. It's like a spiritual move, in a way.
Scorsese here is referring to the expressive possibilities of editing, which another director with the same script may have chosen to avoid, thinking it would clash with a setting that supposedly requires a classical or realist approach.
I think it's valid to have different styles in a movie, but it's unusual, and but Marty's movies are unusual.
I think Scorsese's unique style of film language is extremely suited to handling the core themes of the story, the oppressive customs hidden beneath a layer of wealth and civility.
And I hope that when people see The Age of Innocence, there's a sense of being placed into that morality of the time, so that they understand what these conflicts are.
The camera movements and editing choices that are understood by the audience not only help gain an understanding of the character's emotions and motivations, but they also give the audience a glimpse into this world of unspoken signs and implicitly understood symbols.
I mean, I was trying to find a different visual expression of that world in that time.